Alright guys, so in this video we're going to be going over the duplication tools. So if we come here to duplication, so the linear array, radial array, and advanced array. So let me quickly just go through these, show you what each one does. Starting with the linear array. So the linear array, as you can see when you click on it, it takes our original object, duplicates it twice, we can change that over here, and puts it in a line. First of all, we have our count, that's going to change how many objects are created. So we could do 6. As you can see, that's the total amount of objects, including our original object here. Our direction is going to change which axis it lines them up along. So right now it is lining them up on the x-axis, back is going to be y-axis, up, of course, is the z-axis. And the distance is going to change how far apart each object is. Oh, one other quick thing, I think this is a bug, but the slider, as you can see, it doesn't change the number over here until you click off of it and click back on. So let's do that. You can see it still lists 37. If I click off, click back on, now it's changed. So I think that's a bug. It'll probably be fixed eventually. Alternatively, you can just input a number. So to the best of my knowledge, I believe that the spacing is from the back of one object to the start of the next. So this is a 30 millimeter cube. Our offset is at 30 millimeters. And as you can see, it goes from the back of this cube to the start of that cube, or I guess back to back. And it continues that all the way down. So that is our linear array. Let's move on to the next type of array. Our next array is going to be the radial array. So this will duplicate the objects and it's going to arrange them in a circle. Now, the radial array can be a little goofy to use at times. First of all, the offsets here, I'm not sure why they're at this rather obscure number. I like to set them to 0, and I will show you why that is in just a second. Let's set these all to 0 to start with. Okay, so now you can see they're all stacked on top of each other. And let's give this an offset of 30. So let's just hold that there for a second. So the count, of course, is going to specify the number of objects there are. So let's bump this up to 10. And actually, let's make our offset a little bigger. There we go. Rotate part is going to change whether it rotates, these parts rotate around the circle, or whether they keep the same orientation as our original object. We also have our axis that we can rotate about. So right now we're rotating around the z-axis. We can rotate around the y-axis and the right axis, or the x-axis. Now, as you can see, when I did that, it kind of messed it up. And that's because, let's change this to 0. So this tool can be a little wonky. So there we go. So changing the Y offset now fixed that issue. I'm just not proficient with this tool. I'm sure other people are, but it can just be a little confusing at times. You might just have to play around with it. Now the offset itself, let me come back to how we originally had this. I believe, to the best of my knowledge, that this offset is basically from the center of our cube, or the center of our object, to the origin point here that we're rotating about. So our offset is 50. Let's set this to be 50. And I've done some testing off screen to a little bit more accurate, but that's about halfway through that cube, I would say. And it's pretty close. I'm pretty confident from my other testing, a little bit more accurate than what I'm doing right now, that it is measuring, the offset is measuring from the center of the cube, or from the center of our object to the center of our circle that we're rotating about. So it's a little strange, but I think that that's the way that it works. I could be wrong. If I am, feel free to tell me down in the comments. Okay, so our final option in the duplication tools is advanced array. Now I've never really used advanced array before, but let me just step you through this and show you kind of what it does. So an advanced array is going to be a combination of our linear array and our radial array. So it'll line them up, but it'll kind of curve them as it does it. So starting out we have count. That's just going to change how many objects are in our array. So let's change this to 10 so we can get a good view of this. And next we have offset. Before I do that though, before offset, let's jump down here to rotate. Rotate is going to obviously change how much this curves, and I'm going to set that to 0 for right now. So it's just a straight line. So for offset, to the best of my knowledge, offset is going to measure from the center of one object to the center of the next object. So right now we have this at offset 30. That is not completely accurate, and I will show you why in just a minute. But for the time being, just know the offset, at least from what I've been able to figure out, measures from the center of one object to the center of the next. Here we have rotate part. So let me put that rotation back in there. If rotate part is checked, then it is going to rotate each of our objects so that the faces kind of follow that curve. If we don't check that, then each object is going to maintain the same orientation as our original object that we're duplicating. Now right here, scale. Scale is going to change a lot of things. So as you can see, in our advanced array, with each object, each one gets a little bit smaller. And that's where this scale comes into effect. So scale is a multiplier, and the measurements of each of our object are going to be multiplied by the scale to create the next object. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let me set this back to 0 because it'll be easier to see. So if I ungroup this array so that we can see the measurements of each object, you can see that our first object is 20 millimeters tall. And remember, our scale was set at 0.9. So if we come to our calculator here, and we do 20 times 0.9, we get 18, which happens to be the measurement of our next object. And then next in line, we have 16.2. So 18 times 0.9 is going to be 16.2. So you can see that our scale is a multiplier, and it takes the measurement of our object, multiplies it by that multiplier, and that becomes the measurements of our next object in the array. It follows that all the way down. Now the scale is also going to affect that offset that we created. So let me create another advanced array really quickly. I believe we had 10 objects in here and 0. So right now our offset is set at 30, and that is not completely true. Now if we click this right here, scale offset, if we disable that, now to the best of my knowledge in the tests I've done off screen, the distance between the center of this cube and the center of that cube is going to be 30 millimeters. The distance from the center of this cube to the center of that cube is going to be 30 millimeters, and it's going to follow that all the way down. If we check scale offset, then it is going to multiply this offset by our scale. So in reality, rather than this distance between centers being 30, it is actually going to be 30 times 0.9, which is 27. And then the distance between our next two centers is going to be 27 times 0.9, or 24.3, and it's going to follow that all the way through our array. So that is our linear array. I've never actually used it in a project. Maybe one of these days I'll find something that uses that, but that is our various arrays within the duplication tool. So hopefully you found this video to be helpful. Like I said, most of this stuff you can figure out just by playing around with it. That's how I figured it all out, because there's not a whole lot of written or video resources that I could find online. These videos are more just to make you aware of each feature within MatterControl and give you kind of a brief overview of how each one works. So hopefully you found something in this video to be helpful, and if you did, then I guess I'll see you in the next one.